Check, check, check.
Yes? I mean, can I include Pluto or not? There's double A's. You can get a rechargeable pack and stand for them from Shure, but they're fairly expensive, and Duracell Pro Cells work for me. Check, check, check. Talk, talk, talk.
Check, check, check.
I can be back here as long as I, yeah. You want that one?
Yep. Check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Talk, talk. Talk, talk, talk. Nope. No, I'm just playing.
Nothing. Oh, hey, there I am. Oh, yeah. Maybe a little hot there. Mercury, Venus, and then the not important one.
Mercury, Mars, Earth. Earth is the third rock.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I said the not important one.
Oh.
Earth isn't important. It's fine. No, I'm kidding. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune or Uranus? Uranus, and then Neptune? I forget which one is which.
The
Well,
real,
I've,
the real question is, do we still consider Pluto a planet?
no,
No.
no, it's not a
No.
planet. It's only an outer planetoid thing.
Pluto will forever be a planet for me.
Well, you know. Yes. Okay, so that works. You want to check the third one?
Check, 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 check.
That
Talk,
one-
talk. How's
that
my
one might
level?
need some more heat.
How are the levels, Jordan? Check, check, talk, talk. Check, 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 talk, talk,
Okay.
talk, talk. Check, 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 check. Earth is the third rock from the sun.
We gotta get you some audiobook subscriptions.
Have you guys watched the series The Strange Rock?
I have on Netflix, yes. That's a really good series. Yes. You've not? You should watch it. It's probably on par with BBC's Planet Earth. So, yeah. You think we're good? Is there a significant difference in that mic and this mic?
Yeah, this one I think is this. I mean, it sounds good to me, but
Yeah.
I mean, I just like the sound of my voice, so there's that. I mean,
Yeah, so
Oh,
on
yeah.
that one it
This
had
one
to
it
be
needs
because
to
of
be-
that XLR
yeah,
plate that we
this
got to
one
solder
is
down
a
there.
little. I'm not exactly sure why we had to crank the gain on it so much, but it is definitely high. Yeah,
Yeah. So
it's word, so it sounds good.
we just want to make it so that they all sound about even to the audience. Not more
That's
important-
right. I'm very
Not more
important.
important than the special guests. I know so. All right.
Aaron took that one. Aaron? Yeah. And that's where it ends. That's the last one. So I'm not sure if it goes, I think now it goes back to the beginning. No, Ann? Maybe don't have you start till we start talking about it.
Yep, it's going. Well, it'll come back, but. Hello? Oh, so our YouTube one had audio,
Yes.
but her stream did not.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
All right. Boxcast.
Heard of
Do you know where we're going from here?
Yeah, I'm just gonna open this and get is OBS still in there? Can I change that?
Hey, hey.
Should be.
How's it going?
All right. Hey, Steffes.
Hey, we gotta talk.
Matt,
Yes.
tonight when it's all done, can we play that one video about the memorial thing? Do we have that someplace? Not the, you know which one I mean?
The
where-
YouTube one that you sent 2
Yes,
weeks ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have Terry go run and grab us a laptop again.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I should have told you that.
It's all good.
You want me to just go grab a laptop? Think it's ready on it.
Okay. OBS.
Even like chairs, so.
Okay. Settings. Stream key. Paste that. Apply. Okay.
Matt, can I just give you?
Check.
Can I just give you my laptop? Or you?
That works. Or we can have a guy go get a
Oh, we
library
can use
laptop.
mine. I have mine right here. I can just
Yeah,
go
but I don't want to get notifications and junk. So
And I've got VC or whatever.
VDI, yeah, that's bad. So we'll run get our laptop during. We have an hour to get it done.
Check.
Why am I not getting anything? Audio input capture. Turn that up. Oh boy. Jordan, you got that iPad?
Yep.
See what my output. What is that?
What output? Bus 1 through 8 somewhere?
Output 4?
Skype out?
Yeah, Skype out. Is that on?
What's on?
Is it on for mic
Oh, you
3? Maybe I just don't have it on for mic 3. It'll be labeled as loud too.
Yeah, it's up for Skype first. Oh, Lob 2.
Oh wait, no. Turn it up on Skype output. Number 4. Got it. You're in the right spot. Back to center. That's the output. So we might have only been missing one. No, we're still missing that. Go over to the Skype send. I'm getting audio there.
Okay, I'm at Skype send.
Is there audio going out that?
Yeah.
What the F?
I'm gonna put highly dangerous
Cracking down being a nerd door, huh?
Did I just, maybe I just need to select the right thing. Maybe it was, oh, there it is. Oh, that's way hot. Okay. Yes. Okay.
Indeed.
Okay, so that was the issue. Okay.
Broadcast that issue.
But it's fixed.
So no longer.
Go back.
No longer an issue. What was the issue? So I know.
OBS must be when we unplug the USB, stop looking at the Shure USB interface. So it was looking at the wrong thing and not getting audio in where we wanted.
You are so lucky.
Oh, you're fine.
2-2.
It is one. One. Good. Okay. So, Jordan, for your information, loud number one is going to be the audience Q&A line. And you might have to ride the gate and check it right now.
Yeah, let's check it right now if you want.
Check, 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 test, test. Again. Check, check, test. Check, 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 test, test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Check, check, test, test.
We got about 5 minutes to go. If you want to grab a water, a coffee, a hot chocolate, or some wonderful cupcakes, pick them up now. All right, we will get started. Good evening and welcome again to Moraine Park Technical College's West Bend campus. I'm Pete Rettler, the campus dean. Tonight is the last night of the lecture series, so it's interesting how you start in early February and it's dark at night, and now it's lighter and lighter, and spring is right around the corner. So very pleased to be able to host the lecture series along with Kewaskum Remembers the 9/11 Memorial. So before we get started, once again, this lecture series was planned in a large part by Jerry Gosa and Gordon Haberman from Kewaskum Remembers 9/11 Memorial, who spent numerous hours with us here at Moraine Parks planning this event. And I'd like to also thank Terry Mullaney, my assistant, for planning and scheduling all the meetings and taking the minutes and keeping us all on track. Let's give them a hand. Finally, I would like to thank our sponsors who helped make this a free of charge event. We have incredible cupcakes tonight, once again from Tom Moyer with the Candy Man, Mike Chevalier with MCR Electrical Services, Jim Sprouse with Property Loss Management, Al Young with Dunn Brothers Coffee, and finally Kelly Boone with the Washington County Fair Park and Conference Center. This lecture series is also being streamed on the Washington County Insider. Sponsoring that event is Maurice Honda, Property Loss Management, West Bend Elevator, and Collette Systems. And now I'd like to, my final line of introducing Eric Bilstead. He's the executive producer of news at WTMJ Radio in Milwaukee.
All right.
Eric is a national Edward R. Murrow Award winner. And I said that right tonight. My wife picks on me because I stuttered over that the last 3 weeks. She says I have a problem with my R's. So, Edward R. Murrow Award winner. He's worn many hats during his tenure at WTMJ, including anchoring newscasts and reporting. In 2018, Eric was instrumental in the station's Raise the Beam project, which helped raise about $40,000 for the Wisconsin 9/11 Memorial in Kewaskum. Eric and his wife and 3 children live in Menominee Falls. Let's give a warm West Bend welcome to Eric Bilstead.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Again, it's been my honor to be here every Thursday, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate being asked to be a part of this. It means a lot to me. I think what's happening in Kewaskum and in Washington County is pretty special, and anything that I can do to help with that is my absolute pleasure to do it. Andrea Haberman was 25 years old. She was a go-getter. She was an up-and-comer. She had a crazy work ethic. She was a St. Norbert grad, a Kewaskum High School grad, and she was going on her first business trip on September 10th, 2001. It took a third flight to get there. The first 2 were canceled there that night. She finally did get out of O'Hare. She got to New York. And then the next day was Tuesday, September 11th, 2001, when Andy got into the North Tower, and we all know what happened next. Joining me on the stage here in front of everyone is her father, Gordon, and her sister, Julie. We have a lot to get to, and I know there's a lot that we want to get to, especially with the 9/11 Memorial. But first, I know, Gordy, that's something that what I've learned from you, knowing you over the last few years, is that whenever there is tragedy in the world, or anywhere, this is something that it always hits you even harder than it may have done so 30 years ago, say, or 20 years ago even. And that happened again this week in Milwaukee at Molson Coors, downtown Milwaukee.
Yeah, I would like to take a moment to remember the victims and the families of the horrific, what I call act of terrorism that occurred earlier this week in Milwaukee. From our family's perspective, we know all too well that for these families, this is just the beginning. Yeah. There's brothers, sisters, siblings, wives that they'll never be the same. And they're just starting this journey. So it was with heavy heart, actually, that I get emotional about these just senseless types of things. Just like Andrea, all those people did is go to work that morning. And that's what Americans do. So I would hope you'd keep those families in your thoughts. There's people in this room that have lost children that know that the process, life has changed at this point. And you never go back to being the same. So I wanted to bring that up first of all.
It's very easy to, when you see something on the news at 10 o'clock or you hear about something on the radio and sometimes they don't sound like actual people. They're just characters or they're just subjects or they're just names, and you forget that aspect that they also are a brother, a daughter, a father, a son, a mother. They're all those people as well. And an interesting parallel to what happened this week in Milwaukee to 9/11 is that, again, on a day of evil, there was some good. There was good that came of it. There was the story of the one Molson Coors worker who ran out, helping people get out because there was an active shooting alert, got people out, then ran back in to get other people out because that was the mindset. They're just wired that way. I'm going back into this building to make sure that my other coworkers are getting out also.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is an interesting theme to what we're going to discuss a little bit tonight. If we could, starting on September 11, 2001, we'll start maybe the hours, the days after that event occurred, how the community, how your family began to kind of put their arms around you guys. Can you describe some of that if you could?
It started with us on that day, on September 11th. Educators reached out, classmates of Andrea, first our family, the brothers, sisters, Kathy's family, they all converged out to our house to
Neighbors.
some of which are here tonight, that offered whatever they could offer. And it extended in the next days before we were going to New York to the Kewaskum community, the greater West Bend community, with just offers of whatever they could do for us. We were attempting to keep it from the media, and we then made a connection with a local girl who called us from New York. That was our cue to go out to New York. But what started here in Kewaskum and with our families and neighbors was immediately picked up by strangers to us in New York. They put their arms around us. We had never been to New York, and quite frankly, we needed a lot of help. We didn't even know what hotel Andrea was in. By that time, we knew the floor she was on, and we knew that no one was reporting in from that floor to her employer. And to re-describe the scene, it was hellish. We kept our hopes up while we traveled out to New York City, purposely not listening to news reports. When we'd stop, we'd buy newspapers, but not read them. And I I think when the totality of the atrocity there hit us is when we were on the New Jersey shore of the Holland Tunnel, and which overlooked the site. And I think it was like 3 in the morning.
You could just see
And
it burning.
we watched it burning, the whole site, and smoke plume up 50 stories. It would drift up to the top of the World Financial Center and gently go away in the sky. But there were numerous fires burning. That's when my heart fell into my stomach. I knew we were in trouble. So we made our way. Andrea's employer set up a family room. And after we got situated at the hotel, I went into the family room, and I wasn't there 10 minutes, I don't think, but police officer and 3 firefighters walked in. And we formed a bond that extends to this day, that they helped us navigate and calmed us and
Reassured us.
reassured us. And this was in the face that their other brother worked on Andrea's floor and was also killed that day.
Julie, can you describe what you saw arriving in New York when you see the posters and the number of people that were doing basically the very same thing that you were doing, looking for a loved one?
Yeah, I remember the next day after we met in the family room, and they gave us some, instructions. You had to go to a place called the Armory, and that's where you went to report your loved one that was missing. And walking, to the Armory, with a stack of Andrea's photo, a picture of her from her engagement day and details about her. And I remember putting up the posters. And if you've never been to New York City, it's so big, like it's just so huge and it's so overwhelming. But what struck me was when you're putting up the posters, just like every area of the buildings were just covered with everybody. It was like thousands and thousands of people. Everybody was looking for somebody. And I think then too, that was, a shock to the system of how are they going to find one person amidst thousands of people. It was so quiet, in New York, and it's not a quiet place. Walking into the Armory, you walked along, you're walking along the streets and you're just seeing the streets covered with candles and pictures and these people, and they're all so happy and beautiful. They're beautiful people. Like, these were just
On the posters.
on the pictures, they're happy, young, energetic, just really young, vibrant people. And
That basically just disappeared.
right, into nowhere, you know, and then we got to the armory, you know, on the way to, I think it was either at the armory or on the way to the armory, we saw Andrea's poster. Somebody had been there, Jessica, the person my dad had mentioned that called, that started looking for her. We saw that she had been there because we ran across Andy's poster on the way to the armory.
So Jessica was from West Bend,
Correct.
Yes.
about the same
About
age.
5 miles from our house.
And her grandmother had told her, right? Her family, her grandmother had told her, hey, there's a young girl, a young woman from Kewaskum about your age who's missing right now. So Jessica decided, okay, well, I'm gonna find this girl. I'm gonna find her.
Right.
Right.
You know,
And-
Amazing.
to describe a little bit of what the armory was, if I can put it into perspective, I remember a woman, like, well, first of all, you walked in and you have to report to, like, you each get, you got like a case manager or a police officer, detective, or aid worker that was taking down your missing person's personal details and gave you a packet of things that you needed to report back, you know. So as we were waiting to get to that person, there was this woman, and she was just grabbing onto a police officer, and she's hysterical. She's like, "Where is my husband and my 2 sons?"
Never forget that.
And
She had her hands on the detective's lapels, shaking them. Where is my family?
her entire family.
Her entire family was gone or missing.
And, you know, you can't erase those things from, I mean, 19 years, and I can recall it like it was yesterday. You know, you can't erase that from your brain. And those are the types of things that take years to process.
Yeah, it was like a scene out of Dante,
Yeah,
one level of hell. And
yeah, different, like,
you'd report there in the morning, and they had in the basement area where they had names of identified
Right.
victims by then.
you know, some of the questions.
So you'd go downstairs, and everybody is pensive and nervous.
You know,
Is
I mean,
my loved one's name on a list, and
yeah, you would go and you check your
going
list.
down to tables like this, and
You know, and there's nobody's name that they found on the list. Like, there were like
Right.
maybe 4 people or 5 people's name on the list that they could identify. You know, but
and you didn't know whether to come out of there relieved that they hadn't found her yet, or you want to know something. But so
you know,
on the 3rd day is when we knew that it was kind of a lost cause.
right,
because,
like you're going,
they
and you go
started-
back,
Go ahead.
right, and I remember,
Started asking for DNA.
yeah,
and-
when
and
they're
at that
swabbing you
point-
for your DNA, you know, you have to give your DNA, and then, you know, it kind of all starting to, you know, you're putting 2 and 2 together, right? You're coming out of maybe some of the numbness or shock, or I guess, and like, okay. And then, well, we have to, I remember picking up her dental records.
Yeah.
Um,
And then
Make-
some of the anger set in. I mean, I had even forgotten this. We were up in the family room, Carr's family room, and we're now scrambling for DNA, dental records, hairbrushes from her apartment with Al, or her home with Al. And a guy tells me up in the family room, they started bringing in other employees to go through things. And he said, you know, your daughter was not staying at the Marriott Hotel that was crushed by the towers. she was staying in one block down. And I said, well, all of her stuff is in there. Why
Her
don't we
DNA is
why
there.
don't we just get a cop to go in there and get it, rather than it's gonna be 2 days before they get her stuff here. And that's where some of the anger started coming in. So I said, I'm going down to the Marriott on West Street. And they wouldn't let me in. The FBI had taken that over as a command center. And I could not get in to get my own daughter's DNA, which the medical examiner was calling for. And years subsequent to that, I believe they had a videotape of Andrea walking through the lobby that morning, and we had nothing. And to this day, I can't get a hold of those tapes. So,
Well, so let's go to some of the folks that you started to meet out there. You mentioned this firefighter and these officers and this family of New Yorkers that started to
accumulate with us.
Yes. And how did something like that happen? I mean, these New Yorkers, they know plenty of people, they got a lot going on. Why did this family from Wisconsin touch them in a way where these groups then began to welcome you into the circle so easily?
Well, I'll go back to our speaker last week, Charlie Vitchers. And it started with, I think, a simple lunch on the Hudson with a few guys. And then on the first anniversary of September 11th, he said, why don't we have a supper? He said, I got some people you'd like to meet. And in between us being out there the first year and the first anniversary, Charlie was my go-to guy for questions. There were so many conspiracy theories going on, and at any rate, he was the guy to dispel those notions with me. And so I think the first get-together was, I don't know, maybe 15 people showed up, and these were firemen, cops, construction workers, engineers, and so we had such a wonderful supper, and it wasn't all about the negative of 9/11. It was, how are you doing today? You know, it was guys getting together that hadn't seen each other for a while. And it's grown. And some 9/11s will now have 40 people accrue to include London bobbies after the bombing in London. People from Madrid after the train bombing there all had a connection to an event that altered their lives. And it's cathartic for us, but I think it's also cathartic for them. They all have pictures of Andrea. There was kind of like a disconnect between what the people in the pit and the responders were doing from the victims. And I remember one year, a guy who, you know, Charlie didn't talk about the visceral aspects of 9/11, but there are a lot of visceral aspects that these guys saw in deconstructing that area. And he said to me one evening, he says, you know, your daughter gives us the reason that we were down there doing what we were doing, and led to friendships that will last forever. actually led to friendships that got this beam for us. And we actually look forward to going to New York to meet other families.
Because, you know, it's the anniversary every September 11th. We always all gathered, like my dad was talking. It started the first year, there was maybe 11 people, and we all gathered after the memorial service on site, and we all started to gather on the Hudson. And every year, that gathering of people and that family of people that were either part building the new memorial, the new 9/11, the New York 9/11 memorial, firefighters, workers, some of the other people he was describing, every year, there is still that gathering there, and it has grown exponentially from leaps and bounds, and we always host it, and the last 2 years, we haven't been able to be there because we were here, but it still goes on, and, you know, we video with everybody there, you know, we're Skyping, and we know that they're still there. I mean, people come from all around the world, and I think that is one of those, such an amazing thing, some good. And like my dad said, you know, you're surrounded by all these people that have been through these horrific events and seen the worst of the worst. But they just want to talk about regular stuff, because you don't have to talk about the tragedy because they already know about it. Right. You're comfortable because they know.
Equalized.
Right, it takes that elephant in the room out of the room, you know, and you can just, it starts maybe we start gathering around 4:30, and I mean, we're there till 2, 3, you know, and
Provides us great comfort. And a lot of museum people started attending. A lot of the guys that worked in the pit for City of New York, DDC, the Design Development Commission. Many of those guys felt so strongly connected after their work in deconstruction that they agreed to be architects, engineers, construction people for what was going to be the 9/11 Memorial Museum. And they couldn't leave the site. They had to see it rebuilt. And we were given throughout the years amazing access while the museum was being built. When it was just nothing but a hole in the ground and 2 pits where the pools are now. So all the way along the process, we've been kept informed. We've created associations. Those associations lead right into the memorial that we're building in Kewaskum.
Right.
And that actually started after the 10th anniversary, the memorial idea.
So whose idea was it
For what?
for the one here, the Kewaskum,
You know,
Wisconsin 9/11 Memorial?
That I always say I'm nobody, but I surround myself with good people, and that gives me a little bit of credibility. But we were out at JFK Airport with a curator from the 9/11 Museum and Port Authority engineer who was curator of all the remaining pieces that that were kept from the trade centers. scrolling through you, and it starts actually right here. If you go back. That's our beam as it sat on the building. And they snapped a picture of that, and we ended up getting this to
So
us
that's the, which one? That's,
on the right side.
Where the
That
arrow,
oh, with the
cross-
aerial.
that
Okay.
section.
So that's what it was buried in. And
I think this is a great picture because it gives a, like when people see the beam,
now,
now what, like I can see the beam, but with,
put it
Well,
in context where
and
it
when you
was
see
on the
this,
building.
it's one portion, I mean, one of these I-beams is,
Massive.
it's massive. It is 2 times the size of this room.
But this gives you an idea of the scope. They're standing right now one level below ground. There were 8 other stories going down that they had to dig out. So you can keep going in. So we were out at the hangar at JFK with curators. A gentleman from the Port Authority, he was a survivor of the 93 bombing. And he also survived getting out of the North Tower from the 68th floor on 9/11. So all these materials ended up in JFK Airport. And right there, this gentleman,
Rafe.
who's part of our family, his name is Rafe Greco, was a welder who actually ended up cutting that beam off the North Tower, our beam, if you go back. Nope. Forward. There. Our beam is that beam he's standing next to. And as we were going through JFK, he said to me, "That's my cut." And he knew how his torches cut. His torch is actually in a display in the museum. That there are these big, long things that they have to use. And so he's going past that, and he said, "That's my cut." And the small lady that was in one of the previous pictures, right there, her name is Amy Weinstein. Amy Weinstein is curator at the 9/11 Museum in New York. So when you ask when the idea started, we were acquainted that all these pieces that were in that hangar were going to be released to go in memorials across the country and perhaps around the world. But this was all that was left. And so upon returning from that trip, I met with Jerry Gosa, who's here, Larry Amo, an educator out in Kewaskum, Matt Heiser, village administrator in Kewaskum, and the school superintendent at that time. And just asked him if Kewaskum had any interest in obtaining a piece of steel. Didn't know it would be that one yet. However, they did. A formal application went in, I want to say in 2011, maybe late in 2010. And an architect that was a former student at Kewaskum High School drew some renditions. The artifacts had to be held by a 501c3 corporation. There's some strict rules for use of the material. For example, you can't charge people to see it, you know, and it has to be available for public view. At any rate, made this application, and lo and behold, I think it was 2012, we got notification that that application was approved. And I'd like to say the rest is history, but it was just beginning at that point.
Well, we'll skip some of that because I know there's
Yeah.
a lot of mundane back and forth that you guys have
Sure.
to go through. But so Charlie Vitchers, who was here last week, he got it out and got it to Ohio.
Well, it was held in the name of Kewaskum Arts Council. The insurances to get it off of
Yeah.
JFK were, I mean, thousands and thousands of dollars. And then to truck it across the states, you had to have insurance. Charlie made a few phone calls, got a trucking company to donate, picking it up at JFK. They had the appropriate licenses. Ended up back at Milford, Pennsylvania, Charlie's town, where it was exhibited for a while. And Charlie and I, we were building an adaptive home for a vet that was injured in Iraq, a reservist who was a policeman in Cleveland. And he needed, you know, handicapped everything in the home. And Charlie and I started a nonprofit, and we ended up, Charlie did half the work on the house himself. I didn't do any work. I helped raise the money a little bit, but we came up with a plan of it after being displayed in Milford. He rented a U-Haul trailer, brought it to Cleveland, where it was displayed at a VFW post, and for, I don't know, 2 months.
Raising money. And
It helped. And so how do we get it back here? That's where Jerry Gosa and I, we rented a trailer, drove all night, and a gentleman in Cleveland donated his grader and so on, and put it on top of the trailer, and we headed back to Wisconsin. And I'm shortening a long story, but it ended up back here August 3rd, 2014.
well, and as you were bringing it back,
Yeah.
people knew what you were
Sure.
tugging, right? I mean, people knew what was in tow.
Sure. We'd stop for gas, and people would come up and ask, you know, what the heck is this? And, when they heard it was from the trade center, the cameras would come out, and it was quite a journey. But then we got it back to Kewaskum, and that's where a committee was formed. And Dustin Melzark, who's in the audience here, drew up some preliminary designs, and it kind of just grew, is what happened. But we were still not incorporated.
Right.
We had to get the steel transferred from the Arts Council to our own 501c3, and we incorporated in April of 2017. Meanwhile, having had raised money for a memorial from many people through the Arts Council, we then had to have title of the item transferred from the Port Authority of New York from the Arts Council to Kewaskum Remembers 9/11. And I'll tell you, if you want to deal with the bureaucracy, get yourself in front of the Port Authority. It doesn't. So after we obtained that, our fundraising started in earnest. The steel was displayed,
Well, what did it mean?
plans developed.
What did it mean to have it, Julie, here in Wisconsin? What was that special to know that this had now been brought to the state, that had been brought basically to your hometown?
Yeah, it's good to know that it will help other people know a portion of the events of September 11th, and so they don't forget, and so they can pass it along to their kids. You know, I see the memorial now a comfort for me in terms of it will help educate future generations about the goodness of America, but also of the horrible events of that day, you know, and that led up to that day. And to educate that that's still going on. I mean, there's a lot of good the people are good, you know, but I don't want to glaze over the fact that these are bad people and their hatred isn't going away. It's, you know, and I think that that is an important thing to pass on, that people, that the awareness of that, like, and that how that as an education, how 9/11 affects them every single day. Like I did a little test this last week, actually in the last like 4 days, how many times there was a reference to 9/11 that I either heard or saw, either on the radio, on the TV, or ran across in something that I was reading. And it was 37 times in the last 4 days when I wasn't even conscious, you know, well, I'm always, not always consciously thinking of it. I think my unconscious is, but 37 times there's a reference to September 11th. And that was just in 4 days. So I think that that's an important, the importance so much of the memorial to me is education for the future and for my kids and the change that has happened because of that. You know, and of course, to remember, you know, to remember all of the
But-
sacrifice.
But to honor
Yeah,
also are the more beautiful design by Flagstone in landscaping in Cedarburg encompasses a full military area that will be built. It honors the first responders, the victims, the workers who are, you know, developing terrible
because they can't be
diseases.
forgotten.
They will not be forgotten.
No.
I think I can envision years from now, school kids coming
Right.
there.
And
To-
it's being set up there for
It
rows of
does.
seats where.
It does,
So that's the idea, right? To have someone teach or speak from the site.
right? And it'll be, they passed a resolution in Washington County, making it Washington County's official 9/11 memorial, and then with the help of many, a memorial highway will be on the map now, leading people to this memorial, and we want people to come and learn. And for generations to come. You know, one of the things about 9/11 with me is it taught me the compassion and the goodness that we as Americans have, and the greatness of this country. My goodness, almost 7,000 young people have been killed in the armed forces since 9/11. Thousands and thousands injured. The ripple effects for those families will go long also. There will be a place here to honor them. So it's hard to use the word celebratory when you're talking about 9/11, but I want this place to be a place that people will come away with feelings of pride for their countries, for their community, and going
Thankfulness.
forward, they'll take that with them. So we're on our way.
Well, there's something about it too I remember during the Raise the Beam event that we were doing at the radio station, I had the opportunity to talk to some of the high school kids at Kewaskum, and a couple of the kids that I talked to had actually been to Ground Zero, and a couple of them hadn't. And the ones who had said that made all the difference in the world. I mean, at the time, they were maybe one, and they said seeing it, being there and seeing the size and the enormity changed their idea. Just like going to Pearl Harbor. I've never been, but I assume the same thing happens when you go to Pearl Harbor. You just have a different idea and perspective. If it's here, if you're able to bring a piece of that here, in some ways you're getting that same effect, right? Where you can perhaps change the mindset and at least help someone learn about something they otherwise would not have understood.
Yes.
Historical touchstone to an event that happened in the past. This will be that.
Did you have something to add, Julie?
No, I agree. It'll be, when you talk about the high school students and them, coming and seeing and changing their perspective on things. And I think that's the goal, to change the perspective on, again, how great we all are as Americans, but
How privileged we are to be
yeah.
Americans.
So you guys have said many times that this isn't just for Andy.
No.
That you're just one family.
Yes.
And you know the number, I'm sure. How many Wisconsin connections there are to 9/11?
Yeah, 17.
17?
Yeah. I actually have a photograph on there of the Wisconsin ties. And there were 3 servicemen that were killed in the Pentagon, career military people from northern Wisconsin. I became very good friends with a father of a young lady that went to school in Beaver Dam, and she was killed there. So, states had ripple effects like that. This is not a memorial to an individual. There's 2,977 that were killed that day, going to work.
Have you been surprised at all by the outreach of support as this memorial has started to grow over the last several years? It started small and it's grown and it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. You had the governor there signing a bill recently. It's.
Well, I'm appreciative and amazed every day that the support that we are receiving from this, and there have been literally hundreds of donations. We're selling bricks for in the walkways that people can memorialize or leave a message for anyone. But it extends to the people who have offered their labor, their employees' labor, their time, their design efforts, their to help us get this done. And in addition, the donations we've been receiving from foundations, from large businesses, local, large and small businesses, will propel this becoming a reality. It is, it's humbling.
How soon before it becomes officially official? When's the official groundbreaking?
We are hoping that it will be on September 11th this year. That we're going to be that far along that people can come and enjoy
Celebrate.
and educate and celebrate.
So, if Andy were driving by and she sees this giant memorial in all its glory, what do you think she would say?
She drive past.
I can't swear in here, so I'm not gonna do that.
No,
She was a pretty shy person.
I don't know if
and,
she would drive past, she'd be like, oh my God, I'm not even looking.
there's some-
She would just drive by, yep, there it
You
is.
know, interesting story about that. The September 12th, 2001, to give you an idea of Andrea's shyness, I got a call from the principal at Kewaskum High School. He said, Gordon, I'm taking phone calls asking for photographs. She never had her photograph taken in high school.
There wasn't a senior picture.
Right. And, you know, so we had to scramble for a photo.
You know, I think about Andrea, she wasn't shy in the way where she couldn't talk to people, like she would have no problem talking to you or I or addressing a group.
And tell me when I was wrong. all the
Right, or
time.
like, exactly,
No.
let's not dummy down her personality in the sense of she was shy. She just never sought out the center of attention, even though she quietly gave that so well anyways, because when she talked, you listened, you know? She wasn't, I mean, very bubbly personality, so she wasn't shy. She just was like, I don't want to be the center of attention of anything, you know? So she wasn't a little mouse or anything like that. She was just not interested in, if she wanted to know you, she would make a point to know you. If she didn't want to know, you know, she was like that, you know?
She was happy.
Yeah.
And just bought a house in July. That year, wedding was all planned, set to go.
Yeah.
And then, just like the people at Molson Coors, she
Just went to work.
She went to work that day.
So you think about that in, it hasn't been 20 years yet, but you know, in nearly 2 decades, the number of people that you guys have met, your family has met, your lifelong friendships that you have made because of what happened on that day, do you ever start to wonder, what am I going to do next? You know, when this memorial comes to its completion, whether it's this year or whenever, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do with your time? Has this become a mission that has helped you get through the years? And will you need some other project? Will you go back to Gitmo or something? Where will you go
Yeah,
next?
you know, there's I consider what we're doing with the memorial and our associations that we've made a positive side. There's a whole other side of 9/11 I won't even.
We don't talk about.
that we don't talk about too much, but it's been ongoing for years. I've been down to Guantanamo 4 times.
You've sat
That
with the
trial is hopefully going to start next year. And I have to tell you, and I testified in Seattle, Washington at a resentencing hearing for the Millennium Bomber. And I attended all the Moussaoui trials out in Alexandria, Virginia. But I remember people do not understand, Americans by nature do not understand the hatred that they have towards us. This faction of Islam who feels that America is the cause of all their problems. And
That's not
I
going
never
away.
came across true hatred like that, even exhibited in the courtroom. I got done in Seattle, Washington. Ahmad Rassam was the guy's name. He was going to bomb LAX airport December 31st, 1999. He was a Canadian member of Al-Qaeda. Fortunately, a border guard caught him crossing the border. And I think he had 17 bombs with nitroglycerin in the truck of his. And he would have killed thousands if successful. He went through the trial process. He received a sentence of 350 years or something like that. And then he decided to cooperate with the FBI, with the Canadian authorities, with Scotland Yard in London, and he testified in a bunch of trials against Al-Qaeda defendants. And for that, he received a reduced sentence. I think it was down to 35 years. Well, as soon as he received that reduced sentence, he recanted all of his testimony, and all the defendants in those trials he testified had to be released. And they immediately went back to the Middle East or Afghanistan or Pakistan. And so they brought me in, the government, the Attorney General actually wanted his sentence reinstated because of this. And for some reason, they picked me to go out and speak to the court in Seattle. And which I did. I gave a statement to the court. And I was from here to the first table there from Ahmad Rassam. And after I finished, he turned around and said to the court, but mainly to me, if you let me out, I'm going to do it again. Now, this is a guy who had been in a stainless steel box for almost 9 years. Americans do not understand that type of discipline of those who hate. The guys, the boys down at Guantanamo, they're very proud of what they did. They exhibit that in the courtroom every time we see them. And I have to tell you, so many things all of us have no control over. None of us had any control over how these defendants were treated prior to getting to Guantanamo. That was presidential decisions. I'm talking about the rendition. And they're trying to escape the death penalty down there because of those procedures. And but we didn't have control of that. But these guys, the true story of 9/11 operationally is down at Guantanamo. 20 years is long enough.
Julie, did you have something you wanted to say?
I don't know how to adequately put into words better than what my dad just did in regards to, the other life of 9/11 that, people don't see. That's behind our scenes. That's, it's our everyday life. And we've just chosen to take the route to pursue it in good ways and to pursue the justice of it. But I just want to reiterate what my dad said. You cannot, like, the hatred is so, it's like palpable. Like, you're not going to eradicate the hatred from these people. They will do it again. They're going to do it again. And they're just sitting there awaiting to be tried. And, you asked what the next chapter was after, for my dad and for my family. And I think that,
Well, I'm a lot older.
right.
I know what my chapter's going to be, so.
but I think a lot of it will be seeing through Gitmo. And, maybe Mike Nichols will write another book.
Yeah, get him down there.
We're also suing Saudi Arabia,
Yep, there's that lawsuit.
that's been a 10-year battle too, because they're an ally of ours and they were a sovereign nation at the time. And we actually, I'm a member of several family steering groups, and we had a law passed at the end of Obama's administration called Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, and which allowed us to go into court. Saudi Arabia, I believe, on a government basis, factions of their government funded these guys here in the United States. I mean, they didn't operate without money. And so that's ongoing. I have no idea when that'll resolve. So
So he'll be busy.
So you got plenty to do. Gordy, Julie, thank you.
well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank all of you.
Is there anyone who would like to ask a question? I still got some I can ask, but want to make sure that we open it up to anyone in the audience. Just raise your hand, we'll get you a mic.
Thank you, Gordon and Julie, for sharing your story, and Eric for coming down for 4 weeks. It's very thoughtful of you to do that. So Gordon and Julie, I know you have another pickup in New York here in March for the Survivor Tree. What does that mean to you?
You talk about associations with the museum. When they were taking apart Ground Zero, there was one tree in that whole, the pit was like 9 acres, but in the actual destruction zone was like 16 or 17 acres. They found a tree and decided to save it. It's a pear tree. And they grabbed that off the site, got it to good tree people, and they were able to save that tree. And it's a pear tree, and they call it the Survivor Tree. That Survivor Tree is now planted on the plaza, almost in between the two pools where they have all the names. It's flourished. And so the Survivor Tree has, it means life. Something lived through that and came out. And now it's at the site where it once was. And we've been fortunate. They have cloned that pear tree over the years and have grown seedlings from it. And friends at the museum who are very attuned to what's happening here in Kewaskum, they're watching this project also. I applied for one of the clones of that tree, and they award, I think, 2 or 3 a year to various organizations after those organizations are reviewed, and then it's gonna, so we've been awarded a pear tree from the original one at Ground Zero that will go on the memorial grounds. And I guess if there's a drawback to it, the thing is they won't ship that. So we have to drive out there and get that. And I'm very hopeful that the insurance requirements are not as great as the steel, but it will be. So it's an honor to get one of these trees, and gives us a connection again from New York. The steel on the site, Peter's design is very symbolic also. For example, the steel beam is pointed directly to New York City. So it's up in the air, pointing back to New York. There will be a oak tree planted on the site that will be 740 feet from the center of the memorial, representing 740 miles. It is from Kewaskum to New York City. This is a well thought out and planned.
Every aspect of the design is very well thought out and all has a meaning. So I
And
encourage you to
respectful.
look online, and everything has a meaning, the plans, where they're placed.
An emotional
shape.
process, actually.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I guess not.
What is that picture you have there that you guys took out there?
We always carry a picture of Andrea with us. I don't care who it is. And I brought that with me for
Support.
a little support tonight, knowing she doesn't want me talking about it.
The website for the memorial, for those who are interested.
Wisconsin 9/11memorial.com.
Well, I have been in awe of what you guys have been doing for several years now, and it never ceases to amaze me. I'd heard about the survivor tree, and I'm glad that was brought up because I neglected to write it down, but I knew that was coming. And that, again, it's just another thing that this memorial is doing, and the number of people involved. You're doing great things, and this is a remarkable achievement to be able to have this happen. So thank you on behalf of the state for creating this memorial, and thanks for coming tonight.
It'll be nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes our lecture series. So very happy that you guys shared your story with us tonight, and all the stories we heard for the last 4 weeks. We really appreciate it. And I just very grateful you all showed up, and you all have a good night. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.